Miss Hurst from Hamilton County Schools. We're going to continue our work with fairy tales today by looking at a new text called Little Briar Rose. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Today we're going to be analyzing how character development impacts the plot of a story. As you do your first read of Little Briar Rose, I want you to notice who the story is about, what happens, where and when it happens, and why those involved react as they do. I want you to annotate by marking vocabulary and key passages you want to revisit. I want you to connect ideas within the selection to what you already know and what you've already read, and respond by writing a summary. Pause me while you do that work and press play when you're ready to continue. All right, just looking at Little Briar Rose, the first paragraph says, I'm actually going to split it in half. A king and queen once upon a time reigned in a country a great way off, where they were in those days fairies. Now this king and queen had plenty of money and plenty of fine clothes to wear and plenty of good things to eat and drink and a coach to ride out in every day. But though they had been married many years, they had no children, and this grieved them very much indeed. But one day, as the queen was walking by the side of the river at the bottom of the garden, she saw a poor little fish that had thrown itself out of the water and lay gasping and nearly dead on the bank. Then the queen took pity on the little fish and threw it back again into the river, and before it swam away, it lifted its head out of the water and said, I know what your wish is, and it shall be fulfilled. In return for your kindness to me, you will soon have a daughter. All right, what words or actions describe the queen in this first half of paragraph 1? How would you describe the queen in the first half of this paragraph? What is the effect of those character traits in this story? All right, now I'm going to read the rest of paragraph 1. What the little fish had foretold soon came to pass, and the queen had a little girl, so very beautiful that the king could not cease looking on it for joy, and said he would hold a great feast and make merry and show the child to all the land. So he asked his kinsmen and nobles and friends and neighbors, but the queen said, I will have the fairies also, that they might be kind and good to our little daughter. Now there were 13 fairies in the kingdom, but as the king and queen had only 12 golden dishes for them to eat out of, they were forced to leave one of the fairies without asking her. So 12 fairies came, each with a high red cap on her head and red shoes with high heels on her feet, and a long white wand in her hand. And after the feast was over, they gathered round in a ring and gave all their best gifts to the little princess. One gave her goodness, another beauty, another riches, and so on, till she had all that was good in the world. All right, how does the queen change or show a different side of her personality in the rest of this paragraph? All right, next we're going to look at paragraph 2. So I'm going to read paragraph 2. Just as 11 of them had done blessing her, a great noise was heard in the courtyard, and word was brought that the 13th fairy was come, with a black cap on her head and black shoes on her feet, and a broomstick in her hand. And presently up she came into the dining hall. Now, as she had not been asked to the feast, she was very angry and scolded the king and queen very much, and set to work to take her revenge. So she cried out, the king's daughter shall in her 15th year be wounded by a spindle and fall down dead. Then the 12th of the friendly fairies, who had not yet given her gift, came forward and said that the evil wish must be fulfilled, but that she could soften its mischief. So her gift was that the king's daughter, when the spindle wounded her, should not really die, but should only fall asleep for 100 years. All right, what words describe the 13th fairy? How would you describe the fairy? What happens because of the queen's choice not to invite the last fairy? How does the queen's kindness from earlier in the story impact the curse? All right, we're going to look at paragraph 3 now. However, the king hoped still to save his dear child altogether from the threatened evil, so he ordered that all the spindles in the kingdom should be bought up and burnt. But all the gifts of the first 11 fairies were in the meantime fulfilled, for the princess was so beautiful and well behaved and good and wise that everyone who knew her loved her. What words describe the king in this paragraph? How would you describe the king? How do the king's actions impact the story? All right, now we're going to look at paragraphs 7 and 8. After many, many years, there came a king's son into that land, and an old man told him the story of the thicket of thorns, and how a beautiful palace stood behind it, and how a wonderful princess called Briar Rose lay in it asleep with all her court. He told, too, how he had heard from his grandfather that many, many princes had come and had tried to break through the thicket, but that they had all stuck fast in it and died. Then the young prince said, "All this shall not frighten me. I will go and see this Briar Rose." The old man tried to hinder him, but he was bent upon going. Now that very day, the 100 years were ended, and as the prince came to the thicket, he saw nothing but beautiful flowering shrubs, through which he went with ease, and they shut in after him as thick as ever. Then he came at last to the palace, and there in the court lay the dogs asleep, and the horses were standing in the stables, and on the roof sat the pigeons fast asleep with their heads under their wings. And when he came into the palace, the flies were sleeping on the walls, the spit was standing still. The butler had the jug of ale at his lips, going to drink a draught. The maid sat with the fowl in her lap, ready to be plucked, and the cook in the kitchen was still holding up her hand as if she was going to beat the boy. All right, what words describe the prince in these paragraphs? How would you describe the prince? What words show the passage of time in these paragraphs? How does that passage of time impact the plot here? All right, now that we have finished our close read, I want you to take your time to do a good, solid, at least paragraph, if not a whole essay on this end task. Make sure you use evidence from the text. How does the setting and character development in the story impact the resolution of the story? Remember to do your best work on this. Once you're done with that, you can have a wonderful rest of your day.